Hey there, lovely Water Trio listeners. I'm Cassandra and I'm joined here by my dear friends and colleagues in action, Alicia and Kelly. So we are going to be exploring 2 weeks of April with you today, and that will be the astrology between April 13 and 26, I believe. So Kel, I think it might be you that's going to be sharing with us some of the nicer astrology that we've seen in a while.
Yes, there is a little bit of a reprieve in the cosmic weather in the middle of the month. So there's this weird pair of aspects. I want to sort of touch on both briefly. This involves Mercury sextile Venus and Mercury sextile Mars, which are two aspects that are happening on April 18, Saturday, April 18. Now, they will not make everything better. I just want to be very realistic there that the larger themes to do with contraction and limitation are still floating around in the ethers a little bit. But they do have, these two aspects have, there's a fun or a light and certainly a social, connected, collaborative quality. And I was trying to think, so how would people use these aspects? Because normally what I would say if we weren't in our social isolation, I can't even speak, social isolation, quarantine, shelter at home, new world in which we live, I'm like, this would be the weekend you'd go out with people, you'd have groups, you'd do workshops, you'd be connecting with people, in some way. So obviously we have to do all that online. So this would be a great weekend to do a Zoom party or a group chat, a group video call of some kind, whatever online platform you're using. But I also thought this, particularly the Mercury-Mars component has a little bit of a decisive quality, making decisions about what you're doing or what's coming up in the future. I know we're all doing that within the context of new restrictions that are out of our control, but even within that zone of, that our circle of control has changed. It's smaller than what it used to be. We can't decide we're going to take a weekend trip, but we might decide we're going to take an hour a day and chat with a friend or do your workout or, maybe you're going to get a Skype workout buddy or something. So there is a sense of like making decisions where you can, maybe putting a few plans in place in terms of what the next month or two might look like. Weirdly, I know for us here in Belgium, when they extended our lockdown, I felt better because I was like, oh, that's the time frame in which I can plan. And that was like, if you just think it's this 2-week thing, you sort of think I'll just carry on. But at one point we had this sort of 5-week window and I was like, oh, well, that gives me a chunk of time to set an exercise goal or, get back on watching what I'm eating because, I've been watching a lot of food go into my mouth and now we're going to get back on track a little bit. But knowing that I had a longer time frame made that possible. So the Mercury Venus, Mercury Mars, it's lighter, it's not heavy, it's interactive. If you've always thought you wanted to do this thing with this person online, this is the weekend where you're either doing it or you're setting up the call to organize and plan when you're going to do it. What do you girls think about these aspects? Like, did you also look at April and think about these aspects as like the couple of fun, light aspects? And what were your sort of tips for people?
You go, Cass.
Yeah, 100%. I've actually got a couple of podcasts booked to speak around that time. So a few introductions of people, can you come and talk on my podcast? And I was like, can we do it on this weekend? Because the astro weather's nice. And I've actually been doing some horoscope writing for a fellow astrologer. And because there's so much kind of Venus and Gemini and these different sort of like, it's a very Mercury month overall. And so, yeah, as you were saying, Kel, it's like, my really only go-to to describe that for people in a daily horoscope setting is like, organize a Skype party or a FaceTime. That's because we can't do the other things that we would normally do. And I do like the point that you made about, the Mars, that slightly longer, what choices can I make within a time frame? And I certainly felt that recently because in Queensland, the state that both Alicia and I do live in, they were a little bit like not making a hard and fast decision on when to close the schools. And then once that decision actually kind of got made, and then I was like, okay, now I can organize my calendar, I can organize my clients and, logistics with my child's dad. Whereas before it was like, I don't know what I'm doing, and that was actually causing me perhaps a little bit more stress. But now it's like I know what days I've got, what days I don't, and, you know, carving out that time to do the things that I need to do to survive the situation we're in. And I think that's kind of the Mars piece there, you know, that sort of survival, fight or flight kind of quality. And, you know, we're at that point now where for many people, the cabin fever or the COVID fever, as you were saying, Alicia, is starting to feel real. But one thing in saying all that, what I've really been enjoying, because, you know, I can't go to the gym and I've got a bit of a setup here, but nothing to get excited over, is I've been walking every single day. And it's been nice to see a lot of other people doing that, which I normally wouldn't see. So people are needing to kind of get that Marsy energy out. And so you might sort of, you know, it's not exactly socializing, but it's like from a distance, it's like, oh, there's another human. And it's kind of nice. So, but definitely the internet airwaves could be a little bit busy this weekend for sure.
Yeah.
And Alicia, what are your thoughts around that?
I just keep thinking, especially the Mars-Mercury piece, of mental gymnastics. It's that idea of really having to be flexible, nimble, you know, and we have no long-term timelines right now. We really do not know. So it's like, I think you guys were talking in the pre-show chat about, it's not what we're doing next month, it's what we're doing next week, and trying to stay as, I don't know, comfortable with being in the now as we possibly can. And if something comes up against us, okay, let's be flexible, let's change, let's do the mental gymnastics we need to. And I think because we've got Mercury in Aries and he's in Mars's sign, and Mars is in Aquarius, like really looking to the future, there's this sense of, we really don't know what we're doing right now, and that's okay. Let's just be in the moment and try to deal with the everyday. And I was also wondering with that Mercury-Venus piece, because I do love Mercury and Venus, if it's, you know, the people that you are in isolation with face-to-face, having some open and direct conversations with each other to clear the air, because I know for us, the friction's happening because we're not so used to being in each other's pockets right now. So it's like, okay, use that Aries honesty and directness to maybe just clear the air, fire things out, get things a bit more fluid and flowing rather than kind of just beating our heads against the wall with things. So that's my take on it anyway, what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, when as you were both chatting, it also made me think about like the podcasts and the books. It's like there's a lot of mental energy around this weekend and wanting information, being curious. So you might be feeding your brain or reading those books or listening to those, you know, if anybody else is like me, you've got unread books on the bookshelf, you've got audio files and video files of online trainings that you've wanted to listen to and you haven't, you know, there's always a backlog of things. And then the other piece that, you know, it's a little bit more on the boring, mundane front, but Mercury Mars to me is like dealing with paperwork or dealing with correspondence, just dealing with some of that sort of minutiae of day-to-day like paperwork and organizing stuff. I also wonder if online shopping, you know, I know that has different levels of availability for different people depending on where you are and what your financial situation is, but I did wonder if there might be a little bit more of an online shopping splurge this weekend.
Yeah. And I do wonder about the anxiety piece with this as well and what's possible because, you know, I think you brought it up beautifully in the past, Kel, how Mars in Aquarius can make us a bit anxious and Mercury there too. So if the anxiety is coming up, if the worries are coming up, you know, the mental stimulation, just checking out from taking on too much or whatever you want to read or check into, make sure it's something that you love and that's nurturing and in a way just, I want to say grounding, but it's not, I don't know. It's going with those things you love to do rather than constantly checking your feed for COVID stats, you know, and or what everybody else is saying. I think there could be potential information overload in this time as well.
Yeah, I think that one of the challenging things is for the Mercury Mars, particularly with Mercury in a fire sign and then, you know, in aspect to Mars, I would normally say this is also about physical movement and, you know, about physical activity being a way of managing the mind and the mindset. but most of us have limitations around that. But it might be one of those weekends where if you are just struggling to kind of keep your mind in a clear space, a little bit of like, I don't know, jumping jacks or step ups or, you know, some squats where you're just holding a couple of tins, or what have you got, Cass? Like big 10-litre bottles of water or something. Just to give it a bit of intensity.
Yeah. Or if you want something easy on the eye, you could join Chris Hemsworth's Center app like I have.
Like Alicia has.
And you'll thank me later.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a bit of a fun vibe. And then, so one thing I should say too is this first week, like we're looking at April 13 to 26, the first week in this period is the last week of Aries season. So there is like a tone change as we come into the second week. And I think, Leash, you're going to talk a little bit about something to do with that. I think Leash is next, and then Cass.
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is where Taurus, you know, we've already been talking about how Taurus season's not that great anymore, especially at the beginning because of Uranus. But now we've got Saturn in Aquarius as well. So the first thing the sun's going to do after it moves into Taurus on, I think it's Sunday most places, Sunday the 19th most places, but it's Monday the 20th here. But on the 21st, the Tuesday, it's going to square Saturn. And my sense is that we're being forced into a new type of action. There is the ground of Taurus. Usually Taurus is very grounded, very settled, very, you know, in the body, sensual. It's a place where we can feel really anchored. But with Uranus traveling over this area for the last 18 months, it hasn't been as much like that. And now we've got this square to Saturn in Aquarius going, yep, you thought you didn't understand what shaken up was before. Now you really get to know what's going on. And I just feel like we're being asked to be comfortable with what's unknown in this time. And this square between Saturn and, well, the sun coming up to Saturn is just the two very opposite principles. Completely. And so it's like, how can we find a way to balance both of these in our charts? You know, what is it that the sun's shining a light on from Taurus about the newness of Saturn in Aquarius? Sorry, I can hear the cats going. So that almost in a way feels like what this is going to be like. It feels like that sun Saturn. It's the tension, the push-pull of wanting to feel stable, wanting to feel secure, but everything feels quite out of control right now. So it's like, how can I ground and how can I feel stable at a time where things are very unstable? That's kind of my feeling with this. What about you girls? I know, Cal, you said you had lots to say about this.
Well, I mean, I don't always just have lots to say. Isn't that like my life, talking less? I think it is an important aspect as you're describing, Leash, because it is one of the first big, we've already had Mars conjunct Saturn in Aquarius, but now we're getting the sun square. And I think what it's highlighting is the Taurus part of our chart and the Aquarius part of our chart, and a level of tension or this sort of being at odds. And this is new for us. We haven't had big squares from Taurus to Aquarius. It's not something we've experienced lately, like in the last few years. It is something we're going to experience a lot next year in 2021. So it's sort of this small scale preview of some of the topics or areas of your life that are going to need to be adjusted. Like one is going to affect the other, maybe in a way that you hadn't expected or hadn't thought about. The Sun squared Saturn I always think about too as like an aspect where there is some limit or there is a responsibility or a duty, which is all Saturn stuff, that might sort of tone down your bright light or your warm solar energy temporarily. It's like, I have to do this thing because I said I would. I've got to keep my word, and the effort required to honor that commitment might be more than you initially expected. So there is a sense of like effort, you know, working or effortful. Something's just requiring, it's a little bit harder than you might have thought, bit of a slog. I always think with Saturn too, the idea of quality, not quantity. It's sort of like, if you've got a limited amount of time, who or what should you dedicate your resources to? And I think many of us are reassessing priorities in this, weirdness that we're living in right now, the pandemic world. And, things that you thought were important maybe aren't, and people that you realized are important, you might be attending to more. So it's sort of a clarifying priorities, but through a situation that might push your buttons or put you under a bit of pressure or stress just temporarily. So it does have a heavier tone. At least, that's sort of what I'm expecting, a little bit of like this is a contraction type aspect. What about you, Cass? Our fixed sign gal.
There's just a little bit. I totally agree with you. And just from client work and, chatting with people, I think what a lot of people are experiencing collectively right now is a change in their identity. So they might have lost their job. They might be, still got their job but have to work from home or can't access their job or what have you. And so it's that kind of like the pressure is maybe sort of like, as you were saying, a diminishing of light. And so for people like the three of us, we're kind of used to the solo life and working from home. But I've had some friends, message me on Facebook, how do you do this? And, they're, being forced into this situation of isolation, and they're almost feeling a bit sad or melancholic with that, Saturn influence there. And so I think that, this will be that adjustment period. And I think, this might be around the time potentially where we might get, particularly after the weekend's aspects of Mercury, Venus and Mars, we might get some new information come through that weekend that might define new limits or boundaries that may be spoken about early in the week, or press releases from government and things like that. And then it will be adjusting, what's this new reality? How does this look like for me now, and what does that look like? And then having to adjust and reprioritize your obligations and responsibilities. I know there's, a lot of women out there, for instance, who overnight had careers and now they're at home looking after children, and it's certainly done out of love, but it's an adjustment. And it's not necessarily one that they had a period of time where they could warm up to the idea of it. So, this might sort of, that heaviness of that and having to readjust how your identity looks or how you shine that light out in the world looks may sort of be more intensified under this aspect.
Yeah.
So,
and it also makes me think what you're saying as well, because, Saturn is patience and taking its time. And it makes me think, will we realize that this is going to go on for longer around this time? Will the timelines be extended? Will that kind of come into view as well? So it'd be interesting to see.
For sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a long game situation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on that very happy note,
let's move on from Saturn. See you later.
Yeah, I mean it is sobering, and I think everyone. But it's real, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
Let's call it as it is.
It is
very
what it
Saturn
is
as well.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Call a spade a spade.
So I think we're going to like mention the new moon a little bit. New moon in Taurus.
You
were kicking that off,
Kel, weren't you? Say?
Well, it's the new moon in Taurus, which is which is on the 22nd of the month for everybody. So if anybody would like some times, I've got the 23rd at midday, 12:30 here in Australia. It'll be on the east coast of the USA. That will perfect on the 22nd around 10:25 p.m. And if you're in the London or that central time zone up there, we are looking at April 23 very early at 3:25 a.m. And so this new moon's interesting. It's at 3 degrees of Taurus, which is the exaltation degree. So it's kind of nice, we can enjoy that, but it has a catch, and it's exceptionally close to Uranus. So I guess it's interesting. This is both lunations this month have got a Uranus influence. So I think it takes the edge off the calm, serene, and that breathing of Taurus, or that fecund, nurturative, indulgent quality. So it does have a sense of, strap yourself in. This is not necessarily going to be a comfortable lunation. It may, in fact, be a little bit more about the disrupted comfort, and it may potentially even be a little bit of an aftershock from what we experience with under the Sun Saturn conjunction. So, yeah. So what do you girls think about this new moon?
Yeah, there is all of that. I do like that it's looking to Venus in Gemini. I think that brings a bit of lightness and a bit of fun into this. But yeah, it definitely has that kind of, it's not as, I don't know, I usually love the new moon in Taurus, and it's an area of my chart that I always like to do a lot of work in. And I will still, and I guess it's looking to that area of your chart to try to understand how you can bring in new ideas and new perceptions, and maybe, be flexible and willing to change a bit with this new moon and create some new beginnings. I mean, it's not a new story, Uranus in Taurus, but I guess this is a chance to really get some extra insights and some extra push into what we can consciously change right now to give Uranus that energy rather than letting it do it on us. So what about you, Cal?
Yeah, it is. I still think about the kind of energetic tension between Taurus, which is the pure energy of Taurus is just about stability and security and consistency and embodiment. And Uranus is sort of the opposite of those things. It's connected to one of the sky gods. So it's up here, whereas Taurus is down here. And there is so much about change and activity, like exciting things and stimulating things. And I think to have the new moon near Uranus, it does add a flavor of excitement and it stirs things up. So that feeling of being restless or even a bit bored with the status quo, sometimes Uranus does just bring change where we're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. There's that unexpected surprise. But other times Uranus creates this restless, I want to change things or I'm ready to try something different kind of vibe. And I think, different people will have different experiences with this new moon Uranus combination. Some of us will get in touch with that restlessness and the curiosity that it leads to, and we might feel like we can take the initiative with shaking up or experimenting, doing things differently. I'm not a big app type of girl. I tend to like, a notebook and pen, but I'm definitely exploring how I can do things a little bit more technology, which is, a super Uranus thing. So it's a weird sense of starting over, but starting differently, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of really are the antithesis of each other. The stability of Taurus that just wants everything to be the same, and Uranus is like, no, I want everything to be different. So, if this is going to be a sore spot in your own chart, it might be that invitation to, oh, but this is how I've always done it, or this is what I always order from the restaurant, or whatever it is. And it might be, hey, I'm just going to try a new thing. And being the new moon, it's like what you try on that lunation may sort of plant the seed for that future growth or new things that will come through, which you don't know with Uranus. It could kind of, course correct you or, catapult you into something that I really like this now. And, this is the new me. So it might be an opportunity to, switch up some of your tastes or your preferences around those more kind of practical or, the routine, the regular thing that you would do. If you always have, Chinese takeout on a Thursday night, well, I don't know, get fish and chips or something. Just do something a little bit different. Just to kind of and let's face it, we're all in a bit of cabin fever right now to varying degrees. So maybe this is okay, well, this is the constraints of what can we do that's different or inspiring or maybe even a little bit unique within the bounds that we're able to work with right now.
Totally. And it does make me think about, it's the new moon in Taurus, and the new moon is usually let's reset, refresh, refocus for the next 4 weeks, because it's with Uranus, which is one of our slower moving outer planets, it sort of highlights the longer trend of Uranus in Taurus. So it's a combination, and that's where I think the weirdness comes into, is this combination of, yeah, there's a few things that you can get started that'll have an impact in the next few weeks, but there are other things that will have maybe longer timelines. And then when we remind ourselves, like, this new moon is ruled by Venus, who's in Gemini, and she's moving quite slowly because she's going to go retrograde next month. So there's this sense of like starting, but, you know, with maybe longer timelines or with slower outcomes than we would normally get from a new moon. Yeah.
But I also think, you know, this is the third time Uranus has been at 4 degrees or 6 degrees, sorry. So for those of us that have already been having Uranus transits to that area, this is almost like a last push or a last opportunity or perhaps a way to make a new beginning from what we've learnt, what's already been shaken up. So yes, it may be longer term trends for, you know, in the overall area of our chart, but I feel like for those people who've had this going back and forth over this area for quite a while now, it's a chance to kind of go, right, I've learned a lot. I know what I need to change. Now I can actually settle that change in and really set it into place. Something you said earlier, Cass, that I reminded me of a quote I was reading this week, which is the most dangerous phrase in our modern language is "we've always done it this way." And this is really one of those things where it's like, okay, I have to change up the way I've always done things, and I've had to push, and I've had reminders, and the universe has kept tapping me on the shoulder about this. This is a last reminder to actually do something about this, because otherwise if you leave it the way it is, it may stay and it may be something that ends up holding you back and not allowing to live in a new kind of paradigm or a new kind of world. So, yeah.
Yeah, this Uranus-Taurus kind of connection really is the farmer's cattle prod or branding iron to the bull, isn't it? Like, you know, just that sort of, you know, bull just, you know, chewing the cud, not a care in the world, and then all of a sudden that shock of Uranus coming along. So, yeah, it's like a firecracker type of influence to something that really does maybe need a little bit of salt shaken on it. You know what I mean?
Totally. I mean, and we're sort of veering into the aspect that you want to talk about at the end of this 2-week period, Cass. Because the new moon is kind of on one side and then what you want to talk about is on the other, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I think there's a bit of a continuation of theme with this lunation this time because then on the 26th, so the new moon is on like the Wednesday, Thursday, and then we have the sun conjoined Uranus on Sunday the 26th. This winds up the fortnight. And so this is an aspect that does just happen once every year. And so what I love about this is there's still that freedom piece. You know, it is the sun, it is Uranus. It is about how do I want to shine that light out there, and how do I want to maybe not have my, you know, my leash tugged, or, you know, we're all feeling that restlessness to varying degrees about, you know, constraints of limits, or that tension and pressure of not being able to do all the things that we want to do. And so when the sun conjoins Uranus, this might be our opportunity to really embrace the new normal and push back on the boundaries of not necessarily in a rebellious way or an illegal way. I mean, there are always options too. Almost going to the beach now is a crime. But it's like, you know, when we do have some constriction or this, you know, it's obvious what we're all experiencing, but what that can really prompt is real authenticity, because now we've been kind of teleported out of the grind and the everyday and the busyness and the going to work and doing the things and paying the bills. It's like now we do have a lot of this sort of Taurus time, this kind of all right, we've just got a little bit on the back foot, so we're just going to breathe and we're just going to kind of go with the flow with it. And it's in this stillness, that's what really breeds the creativity. It's that necessity, is the mother of invention. And so there can be those lightning bolts of creative inspiration when you can carve out a new path or blaze a new trail for yourself that you wouldn't have even been able to tap into if you still had that job, or if you still had that situation, or if life was just as it was a few months ago. This might inspire something that's a little bit more deep or meaningful, or more connected to that idea of your identity and spirit. I love that Uranus piece, especially with the sun. It's kind of like that middle finger. I'm not going to do things because I should do, or what I've always thought I can do. So there's a potential to sort of shift your own paradigms around, what you have thought to have been true. And the fact that this is happening just fresh off of that still kind of new moon of Taurus, it can actually sort of prompt you to, really get like the deep within yourself kind of thing and go, which ways have I been stuck, or which ways have I been too stable, and how can I create something more fresh or new or exciting with this? And I think this can really, if you tap into it and if it speaks to you, around this 6 degrees of the fixed signs, in particular, so what, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, this is going to be, how can I do things differently? And, I love the kind of, been speaking to clients a lot about this, trying to, there's a lot of Saturn constriction right now. We've got sort of containment of the rings, but this is an aspect that can be like, yeah, but what can I do outside of the rings that might be authentic, new, or different? I mean, I could really talk about this one to midnight. I really love the Sun and the Uranus aspect each year. And, of course, this is really activating one particular house topic for us for the next several years. And so, we've had a couple of warm-up ones, but, now it's starting to kind of gain a little bit more traction and become a little bit more, okay, well, it's not going to be anywhere else for a while. So in this stillness, think about it. What could you what limits could you push back on if you don't have to pay bills, or if you don't have a job to do, and that's where that beautiful, I know authentic is a bit of a simplistic word, and I've used that already, but that joy, that sparkle, or that radiance of your being can really be unleashed under this transit. So that's my Sun Uranus rant. What about you, Alicia? What do you think about this?
Well, having had Sun Uranus, I'm not so optimistic about it personally. But I guess the way I'm looking at it is, everybody's like, when we go back to the normal, when we go back to where we were before COVID-19 happened, or anything, it's like, you can't. This is a new paradigm. We can never go back to where we were. So it's almost like we're coming off the back of that Sun square Saturn, all that restriction you were talking about, Cass, and then we're going into this opposite. It's like breaking things apart. And I feel like we're entering a totally unknown time, a totally unknown space. We already knew this. The astrology talks about this, but it's like, how do we do that? What things do we have to put in place? What do we have to break apart? What do we have to let go of so we can be in that place? And yeah, I don't know. You put it all so beautifully. I don't know how much extra I can add. I just feel like there's this sense of stepping into a brave new world, and this transit is going to give us and some insight on what that looks like. What about you, Cal?
Yeah, I think, Cass, you did such a good job. I'm like, oh my God, you've just given all the Sun Uranus things. I guess when I was listening to it, I was probably a little bit like you, Leash, where I was like, okay, yes, because these are all the good outcomes of Sun Uranus in many ways. And I've had many Uranus transits where I get those great, like, I get out of my comfort zone. I don't want to do it at the start, but I do it and it works out really well. But I also do want to hold some space for the fact that Sun Uranus could be like a shock or something unexpected where you're like that, I feel a bit sideswiped. And I don't necessarily know, it could be at a collective level, but it can also be, in our day-to-day lives. We're all still living our lives. We're all still dealing with our families and our finances and our friendships and our relationships and our health and wellness stuff. And it might just be that sense, like I think this last weekend in April, this aspect is exact on Sunday the 26th, but I think we'll be feeling it on the Saturday as well. That restlessness and that desire to kind of do something now, but then maybe you make a decision prematurely. But the other side of that is sometimes when you just do something now, you act really instinctively. So that's where I was like, I loved what you were saying about everything, Cass. But then the other word that I had was, Uranus always think about as an experiment. You're trying something new. You won't get it right the first time. And so it's like doing the new thing. How did it go? What did you learn? How will you adapt the second time or the third time that you do it?
Yeah.
And
being open to making mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Because Uranus kind of feels to me like an energy that it invites you to level up. And it's an ongoing process. And so you level up to one step. And it doesn't end there. It's like a healing journey or, scaling your business or growing. It never ends. And so Uranus is always that kind of carrot, go further, push further, get out of that comfort zone. And you're not going to level up if you stay in the same place where you are. So it is that kind of like that cosmic carrot dangling in front of you. And it's, the risk is you don't get reward without risk, and each of us have an individual relationship to risk. Some of us are, strap me in, I'll ride that roller coaster, whereas others are like, no, I'm just going to stay right here on the ground, thanks. And so each of us will respond to Uranus transits, individually, depending on our risk aversion. So
that's a really good way of describing it. And also, I just get the sense that, this is, it's being willing to brave your own wilderness, bringing in Brené Brown. It's being willing to step in that space and go, I'm just going to be me and I actually don't care what others think. Or even if I do care what others think, it's more important how I feel about myself than how others feel about me, and being willing to risk that space. So, it's, I'm always going to come in with the Scorpio psychological thing, but it's like getting into the internal spaces and seeing where it is that you have to kind of push back on the expectations and responsibilities others are trying to thrust in on you. And that's the place where you can be risk averse as well.
Yeah, totally. And it is the sun. So we are talking about that sense of our core identity or that real inner, where the light comes from. So, the ability to kind of be vulnerable around that too will really come in. So, it's kind of like this, potentially an itchy scratchy or a very exciting period of time, depending.
Absolutely. And I think it's really good for people just to get that sense too that this, the week sort of the second week in this period, like once the sun goes into Taurus, around April 19, April 20, we are kind of shifting dynamics. We're dealing with different planetary aspects and planets in different signs that is very different from all the Capricorn, Aries, Cancer stuff that we've been talking a lot about in the last sort of year. So it does feel like there is that shift.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's the week, or the fortnight actually, April 13 to 26. So would either of you girls like to share with our listeners maybe what you've got going on, anything you would like to promote or share with everybody?
Leash, you have anything coming up?
Yep. My New Moon in Aries group. So I'm going to hold it on the New Moon in Aries, which will be, so it'll be.
You mean the New Moon in Taurus?
Taurus, God, where am I? The New Moon in Taurus on the 23rd, which will be, so that will be Thursday night here in Australia, which will be Thursday morning in Europe and very early Thursday morning in the US. So, hop onto my website to be able to register for that. Oh, and no, that'll be after that. That'll be next episode. Cal?
And you, Kelly, what have you got happening?
I was just checking my calendar to figure out what I did have happening. My 4-part online training on the planets will start Monday, April 13. So just as this episode will go live. And information about that's on my website, Kelly's Astrology. And then on the weekend of April 25th and 26th, I'm presenting a talk on saying I do, looking at the cycles of commitment in relationships. And I'm presenting that talk as part of a 2-day virtual summit that Astrology University is hosting called Exploring and Celebrating Our Connections. So it's all about astrology and relationships. Actually free to sign up, and so you can pop over to the Astrology University website for more details about that. There is an option to, buy recordings and things like that, but I know that you are able to watch all the lectures, and there'll be a number of other presenters speaking over that weekend as well. So yeah, I'm excited for that and excited for my planets course. What about you, Cass? What do you have coming up?
Well, I'll be emerging from the writer's den. I've been in a bit of a client lockdown for the last little bit, getting writing projects done. So my books are open, taking clients for a couple of weeks and, just doing all the regular things.
Love it. So you'll be available for client astro readings, Cass.
Correct,
and Alicia, are you open for client consults at the moment as well? Or at this time, you might not be?
I'm booked until I think, the second week that we're talking about, my books will be back open again. I am, actually that's something I should mention. For counselling sessions only, I'm doing that by donation at the moment. So if anybody is feeling stressed or anxious or just wants to talk things through with somebody, just contact me, and I've got 3 sessions a week that I'm opening and available for donation only counselling.
Cool. And Cass, you've got astro consults that you're opening up, I guess, mid-April, which is when this episode goes out.
Exactly.
Yeah, you'll be, finished your big writing deadline.
I hope. I might be in trouble if I'm not. But I've got a couple of projects that, deadlines are sort of due around then. So hopefully that will all be smooth sailing, and it will be a client happy April. So, I hope you all enjoy the new moon and the kind of, Mercury aspects on the 17th and 18th, and you get that opportunity to, have some wonderful online connections with your loved ones that you can't see in person right now. So I think that's just so vital to, keep the togetherness and the mental health as well.
Excellent.
Yeah,
alrighty.
Totally.
Okay.
Stay safe, stay sane, everyone. Bye.
We look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.